The trail of dust and silence. The trail west was not paved in hope. It was ground into dust by the weight of wagon wheels and silent resentment. Claire Whitmore sat rigid on the wooden bench of her covered wagon, her hands numb from gripping the edge. The wind tore at her bonnet, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, where endless prairie bled into a colorless sky. Behind her, her husband Jed rode on horseback, as if the sight of her sickened him. It wasn't always that way, or perhaps it had never been different, and she was only now waking from the illusion. The caravan had left St. Louis 2 months ago with 19 families, all drawn by the promise of fertile land and a new life. Claire, 31 and well-educated by Eastern standards, had followed Jed like a loyal shadow, believing love might sprout from shared struggle. Instead, the prairie exposed their fractures. Jed's ambition swallowed his affection. His words became commands. His touch, if offered, was cold. Then came the girl, Lydia Marsh, barely 17 and full of fire. Claire had noticed their glances, the late-night walks that weren't explained, the way Jed no longer came to her bed under the canvas. There was no need for confrontation. The betrayal hung thick in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. But betrayal alone doesn't leave a woman to die. Claire's fever struck after a frigid river crossing. Her ankle, already twisted days earlier when the wagon struck a rock, swelled beneath the strain. She tried to hide it at first, hobbling, wincing, biting her tongue. But one morning, she couldn't rise. Her vision blurred. She vomited water and coughed blood. Jed stood above her, jaw clenched, eyes calculating. "She's not going to make it," he said flatly to the others. "I just need a day's rest," Claire whispered. Her voice trembled with desperation. "Please, Jed, just one more day." He didn't meet her eyes. "We fall behind. We all suffer. She's my wife, but she's not worth the risk." 2 other women, Martha Jansen, a stoic widow, and young Ruthie, a mute girl whose parents died weeks before, stayed behind with her for the night. Jed rode away without looking back. The dust kicked up by the departing wagons clung to Claire's skin like shame. Her breath rattled as night fell. The prairie was silent, save for the distant cry of coyotes. Ruthie whimpered, curling beneath a threadbare quilt. Martha sharpened a stick with quiet resolve, though they both knew it would do little against wolves. Claire tried not to cry, but the tears came anyway, half from pain, half from disbelief. She had crossed half a country with a man who would trade her life for a day's pace. That night, Martha died in her sleep, breath stolen silently by the cold. Claire awoke to find her stiff and blue-lipped. Ruthie vanished before sunrise, fear driving her into the unknown. Alone now, Claire sat beside the corpse until her fever returned. The sun climbed, merciless, and shadows blurred. The earth pulsed beneath her as if trying to swallow her whole. By dusk, her mind wandered. She imagined Jed returning, lifting her into his arms, apologizing, crying even. But the face she saw hovering above her wasn't Jed's, it was unfamiliar. Dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, a warmth she'd never seen in her husband's gaze. She blinked. Was it real? The figure knelt beside her. Another joined him, a woman, wrapped in deerskin and beads, her hands already reaching for Claire's wrist. Foreign voices murmured over her. Gentle hands lifted her. She passed into darkness. But just before the world slipped away completely, she felt something she had not known for months. She felt chosen. The eyes in the snow. Claire awoke to warmth, thick haze against her cheek, the tang of pine smoke in the air, and the muted crackle of a fire. Her eyelids fluttered, sluggish with fever, her thoughts hazy and brittle like thin ice. Where am I? She shifted slightly and pain lanced through her ankle, sharp and punishing. A low gasp escaped her lips, and almost instantly, someone was at her side. A woman. She had long, coal-black hair braided neatly, with a face marked by quiet strength. Her eyes, dark and gentle, studied Claire's with a healer's calm. She wore deerskin stitched with careful beadwork, and around her neck hung a pouch of dried herbs. Without speaking, she dipped a cloth into a clay bowl and pressed it gently to Claire's forehead. "Easy," the woman murmured, her Lakota accent thick but soothing. "You are safe now." Claire tried to sit up, panic bubbling inside her, but her weakened limbs trembled uselessly. "Rest," the woman said again. "I'm a Hyoka. You stay with us now." Claire opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her throat was parched, her thoughts too scattered for questions. She let her head sink back into the fez. In the following days, time passed in fragments. A Hyoka moved around her like a guardian spirit, feeding her broth, changing the bandages on her swollen ankle, whispering soft chants into the night as if willing Claire back into herself. By the third day, Claire could sit upright and observe her surroundings. She was in a large, hide-covered lodge, the structure warm and insulated despite the snow outside. Children's laughter filtered in from a distance. Animal pelts hung from wooden beams. A woven basket filled with herbs sat near the fire, beside a long flute made of polished wood. And then she saw him. He stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a buffalo robe. His dark eyes met hers for only a moment before he looked away, stepping quietly inside to speak with a Hyoka in Lakota. Claire watched him. He was young, perhaps her age, but carried himself with the wary grace of someone older. His face was unreadable, carved with stillness. "That is Tahu," a Hyoka told her after he left. "He found you. Thought you were a spirit at first. Almost rode away." Claire managed a faint smile. "He doesn't trust me." He does not trust settlers. His wife and child, they were taken when white men came through last winter. The weight of that truth pressed on Claire like a stone. She stayed into the fire, the guilt creeping in. Though she hadn't lifted a weapon, she bore the same skin as those who had. "I'm sorry," she whispered. A Hyoka didn't respond, but the silence between them was not unfriendly. Over the next days, Claire began to recover. Her ankles slowly regained movement. A Hyoka taught her Lakota words for things: water, fire, sky. They laughed when Claire fumbled them, and even more when she tried to mimic tribal greetings. Tahu, however, remained distant. He brought in rabbits from his hunts, stacked wood outside the lodge, but rarely spoke to her directly. Yet she felt his presence, always nearby, always watching. And once, just once, she caught him playing the flute beneath a tree at dusk. The melody was mournful, haunting, and it echoed inside her like a memory she'd never lived. One night, a Hyoka stepped outside, leaving Claire alone with the fire. Moments later, Tahu entered, placing a satchel near the hearth. She cleared her throat. "Thank you for saving me." He nodded, silent, then turned to leave. "Wait," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "Do you hate me?" He stopped, his back to her. "I do not hate you," he said without tanning. "I just do not know who you are." His words settled between them like snowflakes, light but final. She said nothing more. That night, she lay awake long after the fire dimmed, staring at the hide walls that had sheltered her better than her own husband ever had. Jed had left her for dead. These strangers, these supposed savages, had brought her back to life. And in the silence of the lodge, Claire made herself a promise. She would become someone worth knowing. The fire that warms, not burns. Spring crept over the plains in quiet defiance of the bitter winter that had nearly claimed Claire's life. Snow melted into muddy trails between lodges, and the prairie grasses, once brittle and colorless, pushed up through the thawing earth like timid promises. Claire walked with a limp but without pain. The swelling in her ankle had receded, and her steps grew more confident. Each morning, she joined a Hyoka in grinding herbs, fetching water, or tending the small children of the camp. She was no longer just a stranger who'd survived. She was slowly becoming someone useful. But it was Tahu who haunted her thoughts, even in silence. He remained distant, yet not unkind. When their paths crossed, his nods were respectful, his eyes careful. He spoke little, but when he did, his words felt deliberately chosen, like stones set carefully in a riverbed. One day, as she was attempting to carve firewood, her hands blistering, Tahu stepped beside her and took the blade from her grip without a word. He split the logs cleanly, efficiently, then handed the knife back and walked away. Claire stayed after him, heart pounding for reasons she didn't fully understand. That night, while helping Ahioka tend to a child's fever, Claire asked, "Was he always like this?" Ahioka raised a brow, smiling faintly. "You mean quiet or wounded?" Claire hesitated. "Both." Ahioka dipped a cloth in cool water, laying it on the boy's forehead. "He lost his wife and son last winter. A trader came with gifts, whiskey, powder, lies. Some of our people trusted him. Tahu did not, but he was too late. When he returned from hunting, they were gone." Claire felt a pang so deep it unsettled her breath. "He must hate us all." "No," Ahioka said, "but he has learned that trust is a choice, not a right." Later, as twilight spilled over the camp, Claire wandered to a low hill beyond the last lodge. There, she found Tahu, seated on a log, shaping arrowheads. His silhouette was etched in gold by the setting sun. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, approaching slowly, "why did you come back for me?" Tahu didn't look up. Ahioka insisted we follow tracks. "I said it was foolish, but I saw your eyes in the snow." "My eyes?" "They were open. You were barely breathing, but you hadn't closed them." He placed another stone beside him. "People who want to live, keep their eyes open." Claire sat beside him, uncertain. "Jed, my husband, left me there. He didn't even say goodbye." "You are angry?" "No," she said. "Not anymore. I was lost before he left me. I just didn't know it." Tahu paused, his hands still. "And now?" She met his gaze. "Now, I want to know who I really am. Not someone's wife. Not a burden. Just me." A wind rustled the grass. Between them, something quiet and vulnerable passed like the hush between heartbeats. Then came the sound of hoofbeats. A scout galloped into camp shouting news. A trader's caravan was spotted half a day's ride east, bringing tools, salt, cloth, and rumors. Clay's stomach knotted. Traders meant contact, and contact meant word of Jed. 2 days later, those rumors arrived with a man in a buckskin coat who spoke Lakota poorly and English fluently. He brought bartered tobacco and lies spun like thread. Claire approached him at the edge of the camp, cautious. "Did you pass a white man heading east? Tall, brown coat, name's Jed Whitmore." The trader scratched his beard. "Whitmore? Yeah, I heard of him. Took up with some rancher's daughter outside of Omaha. Married her, too. Said his first wife died on the trail." He chuckled. "Poor fool. He probably figured you'd starve by now." Claire said nothing. She simply turned and walked away. That night, she sat outside her lodge, watching the fire's slow dance, heart hollow but not shattered. Beside her, Tahu appeared silently, setting down a carved rabbit, her share of the day's hunt. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. Tahu studied her face. "You are not who you were when we found you." She smiled, though it trembled. "Neither are you, I think." Their hands brushed lightly as she reached for the rabbit. He didn't pull away, and for the first time, Claire did not feel like a woman left behind. She felt like a woman moving forward. What was lost and what was found. The prairie bloomed in quiet defiance of what had been buried in the snow. Birds returned to the sky, wildflowers peeked from softened earth, and Claire no longer walked with a limp. Her hair, once pinned in tight coils to please Jed's tastes, now danced freely in the wind. The linen dresses she had worn on the trail were traded for soft doeskin stitched with her own hands. She had changed, not just in clothing or movement, but in marrow, in memory, in meaning. And still, she hadn't spoken Jed's name in days. Until he appeared at the edge of camp. Claire saw him first, emerging from the tree line with a rifle slung over one shoulder and a boastful swagger that hadn't dulled with time. He wore a coat far finer than the one he'd left with, fringed, embroidered, too clean for Betrayal trail wear. Behind him were 2 other men on horseback, and a third, younger settler with an ink-stained ledger and a tin star badge. Her body froze, but her breath remained steady. Tahu stood beside her. He didn't move either, but she felt his shoulders coil, like a bow drawn taut. Jed's eyes found hers. He blinked as if seeing a ghost, then stepped forward with a performative smile. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "They told me you were dead." Claire didn't answer. Jed's eyes drifted to her Lakota dress, the necklace of carved bone around her throat, the subtle scar on her ankle. You've settled in, I see. Again, she said nothing. Jed looked around. I'm here on government survey work now. They'll be granting land soon. Most of this will be claimed before autumn. But I wanted to see for myself. He lowered his voice, to see if the rumors were true. What rumors? She asked, her voice like flint. That you were living with Indians, wearing their clothes, sharing their beds. Tahu stepped forward, but Claire held a hand up. Jed's jaw tightened. I came to bring you back. Thought maybe I owed you that much. Owed me? Her laugh was soft, humorless. You left me to die in the snow. I did what I had to. You were slowing the caravan. Everyone agreed. No, she said. Everyone was silent. Only you agreed. He looked at her, as if trying to decide whether to offer pity or pride. You were my wife, Claire. My name. My ring. You took that off the moment I became inconvenient. Jed stepped closer. I have land now. A house. You wouldn't have to suffer like this. Her hand found the edge of her medicine pouch. I'm not suffering. I didn't come to argue. He looked at Tahu now. You think this will last? You think they won't come for this place? For her? Tahu's voice was even. We don't fear men who speak with empty hands. Jed turned back to Claire, one last time. You can still come back with me. I'll say you were taken against your will. You will be a martyr. She tilted her head. I was taken, but not by them. I was taken by you, away from myself, from everything I could have been. They didn't steal me. They saved me. For a long breath, no one moved. Then Jed snorted, shook his head, and turned away. You'll regret this, he said over his shoulder. One day. But she didn't watch him go. She had no need. That evening, the camp prepared a feast. Meat roasted over fires, children laughed, and flutes sang into the open sky. Claire sat near the flames, stringing dried berries and roots for the coming season. Tahu approached and crouched beside her, wordless at first. You didn't need me to speak for you, he said. No, she replied, threading a final berry. But I wanted you near. They sat in the firelight, the air between them warm and filled with something fragile and unnamed. Finally, Claire turned to him. I used to think love was something given to you. By a man. By a ring. Now I know. It's something you choose. Every day. Even if it's only yourself. Tahu met her gaze. And if you choose more than yourself. She smiled. Then I choose wisely. The wind stirred the grass. And in that moment, the prairie did not feel empty. It felt endless.